But recently, there's been a lot of, it's picking up with Trae Young. Obviously, the Hawks, they had their play-in, didn't go as they planned. And I saw an article earlier this week from Bleacher Report, and they said that the Pistons could be a wild card destination for Trae Young. So my question to you is, do you think that trading for a player of his caliber is something that this front office or this organization may do?
That's a good one. I think that if the trade is there, they might consider pulling it. They might consider it. I would have to look at it a little bit more, but obviously, and this is no shade to anybody, you get Trae Young next to Cade Cunningham, there's some spacing. There's what you did. There's a spacing that you are sorely needing, and I mean, who knows? I believe Trae Young and Cade Cunningham could bring out the best in each other. Because again, I don't think Trae Young was necessarily in the greatest situation in Atlanta. He has to be the volume shooter and dominate the ball the way he has. So putting him next to, I mean, you've seen him with the DeJounte Murray, but I also don't believe that he's even a Cade Cunningham. So you get him with a Cade Cunningham, you might see a better version of Trae Young, but you're bringing in the spacing. Also, too, with his volume shooting, Trae will dish the ball, and he's good with the rock. So it wouldn't be the end of the world. You probably would lose some of those young players, but I will say this: I don't think you're going to have a Trae Young and Cade Cunningham backcourt and go 14 and 68 again.
I think some people, when they look at Trae Young, obviously the defense is not the best. But I think with Trae, it kind of depends who's involved in the trade, because I would assume it'd probably be Jaden Ivey, possibly Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, who knows. I will say this, that people are listening. Don't be surprised if you see Atlanta blow it up this summer. I think Atlanta's going to go through a rebuild. I really do. I mean, last year they were trying to sell off DeAndre Hunter to the Pistons. They've been in conversations with the Pistons over the past 2 years with trades. If you remember, a couple of years ago, it was John Collins, DeAndre Hunter. There have been, it's kind of interest between both teams. I think Trae would be a good fit. It just depends, who are you giving up in the trade, and how much you're giving up.
I'll tell you this much. I told you the two guys I'm keeping. If I were GM, Cade, Jalen. Anybody else, we can have conversations. You can't move. Whatever you do when you're making these trades, you cannot part ways with those two. With JD, you have to at least be getting back a solid big man. But again, I think Cade and AD are the future. Everybody else, you can get a little bit creative with, because you're going to be bringing in guys. If you're getting rid of those guys outside of Cade and JD, you're bringing in somebody who makes those guys expendable as far as what they provide on the offensive points. So you're bringing in a Trae Young, and you got to get rid of a Jaden Ivey and some other players. Okay, you're bringing a guy that can get you 25 on a bad night and 40 on a good night.
And I think people don't understand how good of a passer he is.
Yeah.
If you watch Trae Young, he's such a gifted passer. Like, some of the passes that he can make, he's impossible to guard. I think the Pistons free throw numbers would go through the roof. They'd probably be like a top 5 free throw team with Trae Young on the roster. But to your point, yeah, I mean, to you think that Jalen Duren is like higher on the keep list than most. We were talking to some, I can't remember who we were talking to on this podcast, but they were pretty low on Jalen Duren. They didn't really think much of him. It's interesting that you kind of have him higher on the pecking order in terms of core pieces to keep. I think the main thing with me right now is I'm questioning the defense with him. It's like,
Yeah.
Are you going to be closer to possibly maybe a Bam Adebayo, or are you going to be a lesser version of Andre Drummond? Because if you look at their second year numbers, they're damn near identical, except for the free throw percentage. I think JD, he's only 20. I think people need to pump the brakes on that. But I will say the ceiling is incredibly high. If he can untap that potential, he could possibly be a top 5 center in the league if he's a two-way center. And I think, some people may be lower on him than others, but for the most part, I think Pistons fans are pretty high on him. But getting back to like the Trae Young stuff, I don't know, man. It's interesting. I think it seems like a star player that this front office and Tom Gores would may be intrigued with personally. I'm sure Monty wouldn't like it because it doesn't seem like the type of point guard he likes.